Hey guys, welcome to Makin Moves. I'm so glad you're here and tuned in. My name is Crystal, and this podcast is about practical advice, just simple steps. We're trying to break down conversations with different guests to find out, simple steps of how you can kind of like improve your life. So this is episode 3, and we have Gus here with us. Thanks, Gus, for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Crystal.
Gus is a DPT, so he's a doctor in physical therapy, and we're just going to talk about I was correlating the Makin Moves podcast with Making Moves like physically. So we'll go into a couple of different topics, and yeah, let's start. First, I wanted to kind of ask you why did you become PT?
So basically in high school, I tore my meniscus playing basketball, and I went to physical therapy for that. And I kind of just like fell in love with the whole process, and I've always been sports minded. So I wanted to get into helping people the same way that the therapist helped me back then and helped me get back in, like 3 to 4 weeks when it should have been 6 to 8 weeks. So I really wanted to help people do that right off the bat.
Awesome. So what are kind of the joys, I guess, of being a PT? You did mention a couple of things about helping people, but, what are some other joys that you get from being a PT?
I think the main thing that I get is that when I try exercises out, I never recommend exercises that I haven't tried on myself. So just learning your own body and your own body type. And it's one thing to read about a study and then look at the results of that. But it's another thing to try that out for yourself and see how that relates to you, the person, biologically and physically and also emotionally, and how that kind of works with how you perceive other things, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So you said that you were getting to know your body. How did you do that?
So you kind of just go through like exercises and stuff like that. So you learn in school about specific exercises that work your back, but you find out there's other muscle groups that are involved, and there's other stresses and stuff that you're putting on your body. So you can relate that to your patients who are usually much older and have significantly more pain. So you can definitely relate that to all aspects of life, but specifically for rehab for sure.
Okay. Are you in rehab?
Yeah, so I do home health right now, and I work in a skilled nursing facility, which is mostly geriatric patients right now. Okay,
so just to be clear, the skilled nursing facility is your full-time job, and you do home health on the side.
Right. Yep.
Okay, so, and this is obviously available for all PTs.
Yeah, another good thing about being a PT is that there's multiple avenues. So you can go into skilled nursing, home health. If you want to travel, you can travel to other places. You can do outpatient sports therapy. So there's a lot of different, avenues that you can take, which is also super cool, which is why I like it.
Awesome. So, we're going to talk about, I guess, physical activity. And I wanted to correlate that with what it does for a person and like the benefits on how it affects a person, I guess, mentally, physically, emotionally, connecting those two things together.
Right.
And then eventually heading into like what it does does it correlate with financially with a person? But let's first talk about like the first part of it.
So obviously, if you exercise more, you're going to get more blood flow to your muscles and more blood flow to your brain. So just that whole aspect there helps differentiate people who are less active than people who are more active, right?
Can you expand a little bit on that, like blood flow into the whole body and why that's important?
Yeah, so if you're, sitting around doing nothing, or if you're just, in bed and you're just like generally a person who doesn't like to exercise or be active, not a lot of blood flow is going on, and you don't get a lot of those body systems kind of up and going. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like trying to drive a high performance car, and you just leave it in the garage. If you go out and only drive it every once in a while, it kind of gets a little bit rusty. So you got to drive it a lot more often to kind of make use of that engine and get that engine going a little bit. it's the same way with your body. So if you don't, perform a lot of exercises daily, you don't get a lot of blood flow to that brain, and you don't get a lot of those brain functions and, the mitochondria in your body working as efficiently as they should.
And what is the mitochondria?
Sorry. So let's break it down a little bit. Mitochondria is basically, they teach you in school, the powerhouse of the cell.
Okay.
Right. So when you work out a lot, you get more oxygen into that powerhouse of the cell.
Okay.
So it's kind of like it gets a little bit more energy, and that's, there's a whole process of energy that goes on there. And if you don't work out, you're not getting enough energy and blood flow and oxygen into those specific areas. So they kind of tend to shut down a little bit. And that's where, the whole obesity thing comes around. So it's a whole process that we can just talk for hours about. But I like to break things down into, kindergarten level learning, because that's how I like to learn. So basically, if you don't exercise, you don't get enough oxygen into specific areas that help you succeed in other aspects of life.
So let's say, you have a 9-to-5 job, and, you have kids, and you come home after work and you're just like really tired, and, you have to make food and you're just exhausted and you don't really exercise that much. Like, what can you do throughout the day, to kind of make the oxygen flow through your body?
Yeah, so I think that's where a lot of people have problems, right? So they're really tired from work, and they're too, exhausted or fatigued to go to the gym and stuff like that. And the advice I always give those types of people is just to make smaller, easy to achieve goals. So a lot of people, in their mind, they're like, oh, I got to reach this goal, or I got to, bench this or run 3 miles, when in reality, it should just be like, first let me just walk 10 minutes a day after work, or 15 minutes a day after work, or let me just, instead of eating, instead of spending my whole lunchtime, which is usually, 30 minutes to an hour eating or on your phone, maybe, take a flight up the stairs. So it's like little goals that you're supposed to achieve. That's what I tell my patients to start doing. And then that, snowballs into bigger things. And then that gets that whole brain cycle with the whole oxygen thing that we talked about. It gets that thing kind of going. Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
So yeah, I know a lot of people, have 9-to-5 jobs, especially right now, just trying to work as hard as they can. But it always starts with little goals, and that's how you progress towards, eventually being where you want to be physically and mentally.
Yeah, for sure. And I think like that's a big part of, this Makin Moves podcast, is like little steps that you can take that will make a big impact for your life. And so you talked about the gym and going to the gym. Can you tell us, what types of workouts we should learn, or what, how important it is to know exactly what we're doing at the gym so we don't hurt ourselves?
Yeah, so I think that's a pretty big fear among a lot of people is, a lot of people don't go to the gym because they don't really know what to do or what exercises to accomplish. And it's the same, my answer is always the same with this kind of stuff, in that you want to start off slow always. So do the stuff that you know how to do first, obviously, so that you don't hurt yourself. And then, the biggest thing that I like to do at the gym, even me as a physical therapist, I always like to ask questions. So I'll walk up to somebody who I see is, really, really fit, and I'll just ask, hey, what's the workout that you do? Can you send it to me? Can you email it to me? So a lot of times, that's how you build knowledge as a person, is just asking questions. So that's what I do, and that's what I tell my patients to do. And I also give them advice, obviously. But that's how I would start if I was a beginner. So
I think a lot of people are intimidated. I know I'm intimidated. Like if I go to the gym and I see like somebody, benching like 5 plates or whatever, how do you... I don't think I'd approach someone. How do you get over that fear?
It's pretty tough. Honestly, I just try to encourage people to, like I said, just start small. Do what you know how to do. And then if you're too intimidated to walk up to people, there's always YouTube. YouTube's a good source that I like to use. Even, again, as a physical therapist, I'm humble enough to admit when I don't know how to do a specific exercise sometimes. So going to YouTube and, finding an expert that knows how to do that is always a good source if you're too intimidated to do something like that at the gym.
And while you're at the gym, what do you recommend as far as like, doing cardio versus weights versus high intensity intervals?
Yeah, so it really also, like, my answer is always it depends, right? So high intensity workouts have been proven to burn more fat, but a lot of people don't like to do them, obviously, because they're super, super intense, hence the high intensity interval training. But a lot of studies have shown that just moderate walking at a slightly more than brisk pace has also been shown to decrease fat.
Okay.
So if you walk for about 20 minutes with an incline of like 4%, with a pretty decent speed, that burns the same amount of fat as a small high intensity interval training like type of workout. I also like to recommend yoga. That's like a non-impact activity that people tend to have a lot more difficult time at than they think. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people don't try yoga because they feel like it's not worth it, or it doesn't really do a lot. But you actually burn a lot of calories doing hot yoga and just doing those types of stretches. So for the beginners, I would tend to start with cardio, mm-hmm. and then the more you progress, muscle strength training has been shown to decrease a lot of fat as well. So doing really, really heavy weights. But again, you don't want to do that if you don't know what you're doing, because you can eventually hurt yourself. Right. So, if you're a beginner, I like to start on cardio, mm-hmm. whether it's high intensity interval training or just that moderate brisk walking that I'm talking about on the treadmill. And like I said, it's always just start somewhere, mm-hmm. right? That there's a proverb, it says, journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So you just got to start, and then that's how you progress.
So you just have to start.
Yeah,
like anything, just do it. Just go out for that walk, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just like.
Yeah, part of the intimidation factor, like you said, is not knowing what to do. But everybody knows how to walk. Walking is the best way to burn fat without having to actually do any type of weight training. Mm-hmm. So once you actually learn how to do a little bit of weight training, and once you build up the courage to, ask a little bit more questions, that's how you will definitely get more and more progress. But for beginners, it's always good to just hit that treadmill or the Stairmaster or something that'll cause a little bit of a moderate intensity over a long period of time.
And you talked about stretching and yoga. I don't think I spend a lot of time stretching. Like, how important is that? Like before and after a workout, or just in general, even without a workout?
It really depends. There's a lot of new studies now that show that stretching doesn't really prevent injuries.
Okay.
But a lot of people like to stretch just for the safety of it, or the fact that they feel a little bit more loose when they do their exercises. So I personally don't stretch as much as I should, but a lot of people like to stretch way more than me. So I spend about 5 minutes before my workout stretching, when it, typically they say it should be like 10 to 15 minutes, but it depends how you look at certain studies, because mm-hmm. some studies show that a minute of stretching works well. Some show that it takes 15 minutes of active stretching. And then others say that stretching doesn't really change the fact that you get, or doesn't really change the percentage of injuries. So
okay.
I like to back my stuff up with studies, but I also don't stretch myself, so I can't really say anything about that.
So I wanted to go into a little bit like a financial stability with correlated with health or physical activity. What do you think about that? Do you think there's like an impact or a correlation between somebody that is regularly active with that results in like maybe a more financial situation?
I definitely haven't seen any studies. There probably are a bunch of studies related to that. I haven't seen any myself, but just from personal experience, I've seen that people who are more active tend to be more successful in not just financial aspects of life, but all aspects of life in general. So they're more social, they're more financially secure, they're more active, they're more stable mentally. So from what I've seen in my 3 years of physical therapy experience, that's what I tend to see. Mm-hmm. But again, that's not always the case with people. a lot of people like to use exercises to kind of have that outlet for stress.
Mm-hmm.
So I see that a lot where basketball or tennis or, you see a lot of times racquetball is people's outlets from the stresses that they have at their job or at work or, in their family. So I definitely see a positive correlation with exercise, but I'm also pretty biased because I'm a physical therapist. So I haven't really read any studies. I can't comment on scientific data, but personally I've seen success in that time.
And I think right now, like, a lot of people have a lot of downtime, so
yeah, for sure.
We should definitely be out and enjoying this beautiful weather, especially in California. I mean,
Absolutely.
we're in California, so I think you should pause right now and go for a 10-minute walk and then come back and listen to the rest of this.
I agree.
Okay, cool. So let's go back to being a PT. If somebody wanted to become a PT or is interested in knowing more about it, how did you start? How did, when you were getting into looking up schools and that whole thing and, seeing if it's worth it and the salary versus the loans you're going to take out of school, how do you, where should people start?
Yeah. Well, in terms of, let's start with the salary thing. I wasn't really looking at the money at the time, even though I probably should have. I was just kind of going towards what I felt like I should do, in terms of sports and stuff like that.
So you're really into sports and exercise and physical activity.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what it takes to be a great PT. I think if you're not in love with sports or any type of physical activity, you don't really have a passion for physical therapy then. So I always feel like if you have a passion for something, it makes it way easier to be successful at that. So definitely having a passion for sports and stuff like that helps. In terms of schools, I probably should have applied to a lot more schools, but I'm Seventh-day Adventist, so I applied to just Loma Linda University at the time. They also didn't require a bachelor's degree, which was a little bit of a shortcut.
But now that's changed.
Yeah, they changed that, so don't try it.
But I think, was it just Loma Linda that didn't require a bachelor?
It was literally just in Southern California, at least. It was just Loma Linda.
Okay, so you did your prereqs and then you transferred.
Yeah, but, USC is a top-notch school in physical therapy. They're always number one in terms of research. APU is also a great school, so I would recommend those two. And I would also obviously recommend Loma Linda since I graduated from there. Other than that, I mean, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, and then let's so the home health, how did you get into that?
So I actually got recommended through a friend who was already doing that, and they basically enticed me by saying there's nobody really watching you like there is at a hospital. You're basically just doing stuff by yourself, and you can control every aspect of rehab. Because when you work at a hospital, you have higher ups, and when you work at a skilled nursing facility, you have other people who are involved in the rehab. But home health, it's literally just you and the patient, and their home. So there's always that fun aspect of walking into someone's home and not really expecting anything. So there's that kind of adventure. You see a lot of interesting things with home health. But it does get kind of tiring just driving from house to house if you do it full time. Mm-hmm. So that's why I like to split my time between a full-time job and then just doing 2 to 3 home health visits a day, if I can. Mm-hmm. But that's definitely a really interesting route to take if you're a physical therapist. So I would definitely highly recommend home health.
Or what are some weird questions that you get as a physical therapist?
One of the most common questions I get all the time is, what's the best exercise for this, or what's the best exercise for that? And people hate my answer, but it's always, it depends. That's my catchphrase. It depends, because people ask me, what's the best exercise for low back pain, or what's the best exercise for my knee pain? Well, we got to look at a lot of different things. You got to look at your balance, your strength in your ankles, your strength in your knees, your strength in your hips. We got to look at your core stability. There's a lot of stuff that you have to look at. So I don't really, it's not that I don't like those questions, but I like to give more detailed responses than just one exercise. So that's a really funny question that I get all the time. Other than that, I work at a skilled nursing facility that's mainly an Alzheimer's / dementia unit.
Okay.
So if you've seen Groundhog Day or 50 First Dates, it's a little bit of that every day. So it's always an adventure walking in there to see, you know, what's going to happen. And it's always a fun time over there because
I feel like you love it.
Yeah, if you make a mistake, they literally forget about it in like 15 minutes. So really, really fun times there. We get to work on getting them reintegrated back into the community. So a lot of times they'll forget simple things like how to cross the street or, you know, how to drive a car. So we work on little stuff like that. And a lot of times it's as simple as forgetting how to walk. So it's kind of like retraining the brain or trying to attempt to retrain the brain. We're not always successful, but it's fun nonetheless.
Yeah. So you mentioned, you know, researching and reading case studies. Do you read any books?
I don't actually read. I haven't read a book since Holes in 6th grade. That's one of my favorite books of all time. But I do read audiobooks and I read a lot of research. My favorite audiobook that I'm currently reading it's called When Breath Becomes Air. Okay. And it's about a neurosurgeon who actually gets a neuroblastoma, which is a really severe type of brain tumor that he gets, and it's pretty much a death sentence. So he gives a little autobiography, last kind of 4 to 5 minutes or 4 to 5 months of his life, and he writes it pretty well. So I definitely recommend reading that. And then any type of studies I like to read too that pertain to physical therapy or Alzheimer's, which is my specialty right now.
Okay, nice. Yep. Yeah, I just like to ask that question of everybody. Well, I want to thank you for your time.
Yeah,
and for answering my questions.
Thank you for having me.
If anybody wants to reach out to you, like, can they do that? Can they reach you on Instagram or anything?
Yeah, my Instagram, I haven't really used it in a long time, but if you have any questions, you can email me. My email is gkarim2, like the number 2, @icloud.com. That's pretty much the best way to contact me right now.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I hope that was a beneficial podcast about the body and how it affects us just emotionally, mentally, and financially. And I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.